All right, how's it going, everybody? Um, so in this video, we're going to, sorry about that, allergies right now in this area of the world are crazy. Um, we're going to dive in today to the Fires of Alchemy. This will include not just the fires, but also the eagles, antimony, and then some medicine applications. Um, let's just dive in here. Let's rip off the band-aid, right? This video definitely won't be as long as the last one. The last one was I think an hour and 8 minutes or something. This will not be that long, all right? Okay, so let's go. And so the Fires of Alchemy, if we there are a few different fires. All right. So there's the natural fire. This is the ordinary elemental fire, also called the common fire. It's used for basic heating. All right, sometimes called a fire against nature when too harsh, when the other terms were too harsh. The unnatural fire, ignis in naturalis, it's a corrosive or secret fire. It's often associated with mineral acids or substances like sol ammoniac or ammonia. That can dissolve metals, and it actually works against the natural order of things. There's the natural fire of the philosophers, all right? The ignitus naturae, the innate internal fire within matter itself. The sulfurous principle, the vital heat, right, inside, that's hidden inside of substances. This is the fire that ripens metal in the earth. Okay. The secret fire, and this is the Ignis Philosophorum or Ignis Secretus, the hidden divine or celestial fire. And it's often identified with Mercury, the fire of the wise, or on a spiritual level, mystical force, right? A spiritual or mystical force. It is actually the true agent of transmutation on all levels. Actually, that's spiritual, that's energetic, and that is physical. All right. Okay, so they used graded heats traditionally. Okay, so you had just different types of heats that they termed different things for different types of extractions in chemistry. So the fire of Balneum Mariae, which is actually Mary's bath, right? It is a gentle heat, right? It is a water bath generally that it would run roughly around 100 degrees Celsius. Then we have the fire of ashes, the cineritium, which is a moderate heat, right? It's essentially heated through a bed of ashes. All right. Um, you have fire sand, right, which is the Balneum Arenae. It's a hotter, dry heat that is actually performed through sand. And so the another one that could potentially be would kind of fall into the first one also that I don't have on my notes here is an oil bath, right? So it could be water or it could be oil. Okay. um and then the last fire is going to be the fire of flame or open fire. It's direct intense heat. It's generally used for calcination and when you have to fuse metals together. So if you think welding, that would fall into that as well. All right. There's also the three fires of Paracelsus, right? So him and others actually they often spoke of three fires. There's the elemental, which is the common fire. There's the celestial, which is the astral and stellar influence, and the divine fire, right? This is a spiritual fire of the soul. So the secret fire is actually the most mystically loaded, right, in many texts. All right, it's that secret fire, which isn't in this list here. That secret fire is something different that we'll dive into, but um, it emphasizes that without knowing this hidden fire, right, no work could succeed, and so that is including Paracelsus and the others. They also included this fire as just kind of the knowledge of what do they call that in other circles, right? Tribal knowledge. Those who would work in those circles would know that this other fire actually exists, but they wouldn't talk about it. It's often interpreted as a metaphor for spiritual transformation as much as a physical agent. Okay, so let's talk about the fires and their alignment to the process of alchemy, right? And so you've got the different colors associated with alchemy. So Nigredo, Albedo, Citrinitas, and Rubedo. And so the great work, the magnum opus, was traditionally divided into stages marked by color changes, right? And so previously we talked about stages. I didn't go into each stage what all of them, the colors represented, but um, just understand that those stages, each of those, there's a transition in between them that would be indicated by a color. Okay. Each requiring a specific quantity and intensity of fire, quality and intensity of fire, right? And so let's look at how these actually connect. Okay, so Nigredo, the blackening or the putrefaction phase. The fire used is gentle, right? It's a gentle, moist heat. Um, it is the slow um, fire of dung is essentially what a lot called it, right? It was just because it was a warm fermenting heat that was barely above body temperature. The purpose was to break down and dissolve and putrefy the prima materia. It's considered the death phase, right? The matter must rot, blacken, and decompose into what's called the crow's head or caput coriae. Symbolism is the dark night of the soul, ego death, confronting the shadow, right? And this is in the spiritual side. The fire here is internal and slow, like a compost heating, generating its own heat almost. It's where the secret fire begins its work, awakening the inner sulfur of matter. Okay, albedo, second step, right? It uses a moderate heat, and so it's often the fire of ashes or sand. Um, yeah, or even like a sand bath, right, in between those two. And so it's slightly stronger than the Nigredo fires, but it's still controlled and and more feminine in nature, right, lunar. Its purpose after putrefaction, washing and sublimation, right, occur. And so the matter is purified through repeated distillations, the washing of laton, white vapors rise, salts can crystallize at this stage. And so spagyrics, you'll see this firsthand. And then the white queen or silver moon emerges. And so after the calcination phase specifically, you get to, in spagyrics, you get to the white ash. The white ash is then, boiled, we talked about previously, reintroduced into the solvent. And then from there, it is filtered. After it is filtered, it is then left to have the solvent evaporate, which is water, and it will recrystallize. And these are spagyric salts, okay, or the white queen or silver moon. So the symbolism is illumination, purification of the soul, the lunar mind. And the second stage corresponds to Mercury, or this stage corresponds to Mercury and the moon. The fire must be patient and too hot, and the whitening is lost. Which in plant medicine, That's actually not true. That last sentence there. If it's too hot, the whitening is lost. That's actually not. It's not true when it comes to spagyrics and calcining the caput mortem. The hotter you get it, the whiter the ash becomes. Right. All right, so three, Citrinitas, the yellowing, the awakening is often omitted in later texts. All right, this is an intensifying heat. It's a fire of sand transitioning towards a solar fire. All right, sometimes the fire of flame begins here. When it does, it is absolutely carefully measured though, right? Because you don't want to overheat things. You'll scorch them. You'll burn them, right? And if that's not your purpose, if your purpose is not scorching and full calcination, then you definitely have to kind of keep an eye. All right, purpose: the dawn before the sunrise. So the white matter takes on a golden yellow tint as the solar or sulfuric principle awakens. Okay. Many later alchemists, these are post 15th century, they folded this into Rubedo for some reason or another. I don't know, leaving only three stages. Um, the yellowing is absolutely something that going through the older manuals is a completely different thing, right? I still don't understand why they combined that, but whatever. There's obviously a reason somewhere. So, symbolism: the marriage of moon and sun have begun. The soul reuniting with the spirit. The secret fire here intensifies. It's becoming philosophical sulfur, essentially. All right, Rubedo. So the fire used here is a full open flame, like the hotter the better. Okay, the hottest of the working fires. It is the solar regal fire. This is where the ignis rotae or wheel of fire or the intense furnace heat is applied. Okay, sometimes texts describe seven graduated intensifications of this fire, so gradually going up to that highest setting. The purpose is the final coagulation, right? The philosopher's stone is born or discovered, right? Uncovered. It's red, fixed, and capable of transmutation. The matter has passed through death and rebirth. So the symbolism here is the Red King, the resurrected solar consciousness. All right, divine union, conjunctio, the secret fire. Then at this stage, it has merged with the divine fire. All right, heaven and earth have united. So what is the underlying pattern? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard something. The following progression it can absolutely be seen using the different fires through the different processes. Um, if you look at the screen here, you can see how these are, the progression going up to that full fire. And so this pattern actually can be applied to distillation of essential oils as well. You start out very, very, very low heat, and you slowly work your way up to your target heating point. Once you get to that target heating point, then you've got your heads, hearts, and tails, right? And so, uh, depending on where you're at with that, is you raise the heat to get to the next stage. And so, you can think of this as in a manner similar to that also. But many alchemists like Philalethes and in Troides Apparatus. So he insisted that there is really only one fire throughout the work, and that is the secret fire. But it manifests at different intensities, right? And the qualities as the matter itself transforms are different. And so the external furnace fire is just a servant to this true inner fire that he described. Paracelsus linked this to the human being, right? The elemental fire works on the body. So, Nigredo, the astral fire on the soul, and then the divine fire on the spirit. And this is why texts often warn: without knowing the fire, you cannot complete the work. Okay, because the fire is the transformation. It's not just a cause of it or a cause of it. It is the actual transformation. All right. So now let's talk. Let's talk about some actual physical alchemy. And I'm going to throw out a disclaimer here really quick, because these were, if you're going to retry any of these, please make sure that you deep dive into the topics of chemistry, because they can kill you, right? I'm not even joking around right now. Some of these recipes absolutely, um, they can absolutely kill you. Okay, so this is actually the operation that Isaac Newton, Philalethes, and George Starkey, and many others, right, were obsessed with. This one right here. Okay. What follows is a historical procedure as described in classical texts, particularly Philalethes, the in Roidus apparatus ad acclusum regis palatium. You can tell my Latin is very rusty. And it's in English it's an entrance to the closed palace of the king. All right. The most influential, a practical manual on this subject, historical scholarly descriptions only, is this involves extremely, again, this involves extremely toxic substances, mercury, vapor, antimony compounds, and lead. Okay. And it was very dangerous to the alchemists themselves. It was so dangerous, in fact, that they think many still think that Newton actually suffered mercury poisoning, and that's how he died. All right. So please, again, do not attempt these unless you're a trained chemist. Okay, the physical goal of this operation was ordinary is a new type of mercury. Okay, a living mercury. Ordinary quicksilver or common mercury is considered dead or vulgar. Okay, the alchemists believed that it needed to be animated or awakened, given an internal fire that would allow it to truly penetrate and dissolve gold radically. Okay, not just amalgamate it on the surface, but to completely dissolve it to a powder for medicinal reasons or whatever, right? The result is philosophical mercury. So it's Mercurius philosophorum. It's also called Sophic mercury or the mercury of the wise. Okay. This animated mercury is itself, it contains the secret fire. It dissolves gold without violence. It reduces it back to its first matter, and in order for the great work to proceed. Okay, so stage one, you crush the stibnite to a fine powder. Okay, you mix with iron filings, so often nails. They called it the martial sword, right? Mars and iron being the warrior that defeats the dragon. Sometimes niter, which is potassium nitrate, and tartar, so potassium bitartrate. Um, they would use those as fluxes. Okay. They would heat in a crucible to an intense red heat. The iron displaces the antimony, right, from its sulfide. The sulfur combines with the iron to form a slag, while while metallic antimony sinks to the bottom, right? You've got this slag at the top. So you pour it into a conical mold. As it cools slowly, a crystalline star pattern is formed on the upper surface. This is the stellate regulus, right? Um, it is considered a sign, all right, of a signature from heaven. Okay, the star. That's what the star was considered. It was proof that the matter had received the celestial influence and contained the magnet, the quote unquote magnet that would attract the secret fire. Philalethes was empathetic or emphatic. Without the star, the work fails. Okay. The Regulus was often remelted multiple times, 3, 7, or 9 times. I'm surprised it wasn't 3, 6, or 9. Just kind of odd, but whatever. 3, 7, or 9 with fresh iron and a niter to purify it further. This is called the Martial Regulus. All right. Antimony married to Mars. Stage 2. Most readers identify Chalybs as the Martial Regulus itself, now considered a magnet because it attracts the Spiritus Mundi, right, or world spirit, the celestial fire. Some texts add preparations for this specifically, right? Alloy the Regulus with silver in a precise ratio, often 1 to 1 or 2 to 1, to create the doves of Diana. The silver acts as a vehicle to make the Regulus receptive to Mercury. All right. Some procedures add a small amount of copper also. Venus, right? The Venus that opens the matter. Okay? This alloy specifically is then granulated by pouring molten metal into water, creating small particles with maximum surface area. 3, the amalgamation or the flights of the eagles, right? The eagle flights. Common mercury is purified first, typically by washing with salt and vinegar, then distilling several times through a retort. The granulated Regulus silver alloy is mixed with the purified mercury in a mortar. Okay. They grind vigorously with a pestle and mortar, often for hours. The mercury slowly absorbs the alloy, becoming an amalgam. They then wash the amalgam repeatedly with hot water until the water comes off cleanly and the mercury appears bright and joyful. From here, they would then press this through leather to squeeze out the mercury. Only the most refined portion actually would pass through the leather. All right, so the flights. This whole cycle is then repeated. Philalethes calls these the flights of the eagle. Okay, the first flight is the crude animation. It begins. Second flight, Mercury becomes more spiritual. Third flight, the Mercury starts to show signs of the inner fire. Seventh flight, it considered minimum for proper preparation. Ninth or 10th flight, full perfection. All right, the Mercury is now truly philosophical. After each flight, the Regulus is sometimes added. Okay, the Mercury gradually becomes more refined, brighter, and according to texts, warm to the touch. All right, bearing that internal fire. So essentially, it would cool and heat itself on its own. Signs of success. All right, the Mercury becomes brilliantly bright like a polished silver. It does not leave a tail when it is rolled on glass. It dissolves gold leaf placed on it within a few hours. Okay. Ordinary mercury only amalgamates it slowly. It doesn't actually dissolve. Okay. Some texts claim it grows warm by itself when sealed in a vial, which is proof of this internal fire. The final test, right? The alchemist would place a small piece of gold in the prepared mercury in a sealed vessel, apply gentle heat. Ordinary mercury again, it simply amalgamates the gold on the surface. Philosophical mercury, it actually is said to dissolve gold radically, turning it black, right? Or the crow's head, then liquefying it. Over weeks after this time, the true great work begins. All right. The blackening confirms the mercury truly contains the secret fire. It has the power to kill the king or dissolve the gold to its first matter. This is the first step of all subsequent stages. All right, the vessel and the furnace for the actual great work after this preparation, the mercury and gold are sealed in the philosophical egg. This is essentially a glass flask with a very long neck, hermetically sealed, literally, with a hermetic seal or Hermes seal. All right, It was placed in the Athanor, or a slow furnace, right, that maintains consistent gentle heat for months. The temperature is the heat of a brooding hen. It is barely warm, but unceasing for the entire opus, which was generally 40 days minimum. And many times it would go on for months. Okay, so some of the warnings that he's the Verc are Vercure. Some of the warnings that Philalethes repeated were things like, our Mercury is not the vulgar Mercury, but it is made from the vulgar Mercury. The fire is the key of the work. Without proper management, all is lost. The whole preparation can take a year or more before even beginning the main opus. And this is the part where many fail, all right? Most who attempt this will fail, either from impure materials, wrong proportions, or impatience, right? And we think about today and you know the culture of modern society. I would think that impatience is probably going to be one of that, and impure material, but impatience, right, with the invention of TikTok and social media and all the other things that you know they only require a small portion of our attention for a very small portion of time. That long-term focus is being lost in society today, right? And so that I want it and I want it now, McDonaldization of the world, um, in the world of alchemy, that doesn't work. All right. And even the world of self transformation, that does not work. It does not go on your terms, your time, when you want it. The universe doesn't care. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but they don't care. All right. It's it doesn't, yeah. Anyway, let's go on. All right. So the work is absolutely dangerous. Okay. There are things that can happen, such as glass breaks, explosions, poisonings, inadvertently, fires. Um, yeah, the list goes on of things, bad things that can happen. So please be careful. All right. Modern chemistry. From a modern chemistry standpoint, what's actually happening here, right? So the stellate Regulus is it's a fairly pure antimony, with characteristics of more of a crystalline structure. Okay, so the silver antimony amalgam with mercury does create an unusually fluid and reactive mercury alloy. The represented washing removes oxides and impurities, right, leaving the mercury very pure. However, right, no chemical transformation produces gold. Okay, I want to make this very clear. The transmutation experiences reported early on were likely the contamination, right, from antimony ore, which antimony does contain a trace amounts of gold, both gold and silver, right? Um, and so if we think about a prior statement from a prior one of the prior videos on what is alchemy, if we think about the thoughts of the alchemists believing that gold was already um, in whatever item they were purifying, then this would absolutely be true, right? And so I wouldn't call it I wouldn't call it um, contamination, because it was already there, right? It's something that's already there, but um, definitely uh, definitely probably from antimony. All right, so Newton, he was working in a cramped Cambridge laboratory with very poor ventilation, and he would continuously taste his preparations. Don't do that. All right, don't do that. And so it was almost certain that he suffered chronic mercury poisoning. and that would actually explain a lot of his breakdown that happened in 19 or 1693 as well. So, all right, deeper reading. So, esoteric scholars argue that this entire procedure is operative symbolism, right? A coded description of inner work, which it can be, right? It absolutely could be aligned inner and outer, which we've already shown, we've already discussed. And so um, I just thought this was a kind of an interesting fact and kind of it kind of aligned with some of the things that you'll find on the internet, right? With oh, like alchemy was never about physical this or that. It actually was, right? And you'll get the misconceptions that oh, alchemy was only about inner spiritual work. No, it wasn't. It was a multi pronged path, right? And so, anyway, whether the alchemist meant both literal or symbolic, only one or the other, it varies by authors, right? And so, Philalethes, he seemed to have meant both simultaneously. And for us, we're looking at it from a trifold lens. All right, the lab work in what he described, it mirrored and supported the inner transformation. Okay, so one final sets of recipes that we should talk about here, and is the trumpet, because this ties into the philosophical Mercury, right? And so the Triumphant Chariot of Antimony, right? This is the link. So Valentine opens with a bold assertion in his in his statements from the Curious Triumphalis Antimony, right? So he opens with these assertions that antimony is the universal medicine, both for sick metals, transmuting them to gold, and sick bodies, right, curing disease. The same substance properly prepared works on both mineral and human kingdoms, according to Valentine. Um, it was his works were first published in 1604, but attributed to the legendary 15th century Benedictine monk Basil Valentine. Or sorry, the Curious Triumphalis Antimoni, the Triumphant Chariot of Antimony. It was first published in 1604. I apologize, and it was actually attributed to Basil Valentine. All right. It is arguably the foundational text for the entire antimony-based path of philosophical Mercury. Philalethes, Newton, Starkey, and the whole 17th century English alchemical schools, they were essentially building on what Valentine had described. So he calls the black dragon the raw ore form. The wolf, because it devours all metals except gold. Antimony was used to purify gold by consuming base metal. Right. The gray wolf of the philosophers, when it has performed its purifying effects, right? It's when it's done. And the famous engraving in the book shows a chariot drawn from by two beasts, right, carrying the king, a gold and sulfur principle. Antimony is the actual vehicle that transports the king to perfection. All right. Okay, so Valentine gives the earliest detailed descriptions of operations that Philalethes would later refine. Here's the direct lineage, okay? The wolf devouring gold. So Valentine describes the classical gold purification operation. Molten antimony is poured over impure gold. The antimony devours all base metals, copper, silver, iron, and leaves the gold pure. Then the antimony is driven off by heat, revealing the purified gold. This was the standard refining technique of his era, all right? But Valentine reads it from an alchemical perspective, right? The antimony, or the wolf, the antimony, is the purifier, and the gold that survives this trial is now ready for the great work. This established antimony's reputation as a substance, right, with a special relationship to gold. The Stellate Regulus, right? Valentine explicitly describes preparing this, though he calls it the Regulus of antimony with Mars, right? His method. So his method was mixing powdered stibnate with iron and tartar, heat to a fierce fusion in a crucible, pour and cool slowly, observe the starry crystallization on the surface. He calls this star a sign that is the heavenly influence that the heavenly influences have impressed themselves upon the matter. Okay, so the same celestial magnet doctrine would later uh, be made central by Philalethes. All right, this is the direct source of the magnet that attracts the secret fire. All right, next is the vinegar of antimony. Valentine's preparation. He describes making a mild acidic solvent, uh, mild acidic solvent from antimony through a through complex distillations that reduced antimony to its regulus, calcining it to a white oxide, testing it with white vinegar, and distilling repeatedly, producing what he called the vinegar of antimony, or sometimes the mercury of antimony, a liquid he claims contains the spiritual essence of antimony. This is one of the candidates for what later writers meant by the philosophical mercury, a liquid form of antimony's hidden fire, separated from his gross body, obviously. Um, all right, so finally, oh no, got two more. So the glass of antimony. So Valentine describes producing antimony glass as melting antimony oxide into a transparent yellow red glass. He actually considered this the sulfurous form of antimony, the male active principle. When combined with the mercurial feminine form, which was the vinegar or animated mercury, the two principles unite the alchemical marriage at the mineral level. All right, so then finally the animation of the Mercury. All right, so the last will and testament is happens as it engages in the passage of the chariot. Okay, so combining the Stellate Regulus with silver to recreate the magnetic alloy. From there, amalgamating it with purified mercury, repeating grinding and washings. This is what would systematize the concepts of the flights of the eagle or eagle flights, right? Producing a mercury that is no longer the common mercury of vulgar, but contains an inner fire. And this is the direct prototype of this procedure. All right. The whole method described in the Introitus Apparatus is essentially Valentine's operation. More it was just more systemically presented. All right, so Valentine's other famous works are the 12 keys of Basil Valentine. Presents 12 symbolic engravings, each representing a stage of the great work. Okay, several keys directly relate to a philosophical mercury preparation. And so, from a Spagyric's perspective, like I'm going to keep coming back to Spagyric's because this is something that we will absolutely be talking about a lot when we get to medicine formulation and creation. Okay, um, what's unique about this, and sometimes somewhat lost in the Philalethes versions, is the medical application. All right. So Valentine devotes a huge portions of the triumphal chariot to preparing antimony medicines. Right. So antimony tartarate, which is tartar emetic, essentially, it was used in medicine until the late 20th century. We still use it for, so it's essentially it's like the cream of tartar, but baked into, you know, the tartar emetic is cooked, right? And so Kermes mineral, is a red antimony sulfide preparation used for respiratory disease. Bezoar mineral. It was believed to be a universal antidote. It was the eternal pill, or there was the eternal pill as well. That was actually a metallic antimony ball, right? That when swallowed, it was said to purge the body. Okay, then it could be retrieved from the chamber pot, washed and reused indefinitely. So for Valentine, the same animation that turned Mercury philosophical could turn antimony into a panacea. The stone was completed, okay, or when completed, was both the transmuting agent and a universal medicine, um, a doctrine of sorts that kind of survived in alchemical medicine through the Paracelsian school. And so, if you read both Valentine and Philalethes' sides, you know, of you know, their interpretations, if you read them side by side, you'll notice that Valentine's is richer, stranger, more rigorously charged. Right, it's full of digressions, parables, attacks on greedy physicians, and theological musings. Okay, Philalethes, he is focused more on you know, hyper focus on the technical, almost to the point of, you know, recipe precision for a lab manual, right? And both describe the same essential preparations, right? But Valentine's, it treats one as a path among the many grand mystical medical syntheses, while the other, it isolates it as the path and presents it with maximum clarity. So, um, as with the theme of this channel, we would, you know, generally align with the previous definition that the Valentine uses, right, where it's a piece, right, just one path among a grand mystical, you know, synthesis of many paths, right? So, all right, so next, important references. So an open entrance, these are all three of these are the treaties and different, you know, things that the later half of this presentation that I described. And so I will link these in the video description below. And so for the sake of time, we're at about 50 minutes here. We're about 50, a little over 50 minutes, so I'm going to cut this video now. And future videos, I promise, will be much shorter. We're just kind of diving into some of the deeper things here. So, all right, thank you for watching, and as usual, like and subscribe if any of this, you know, resonates with you. Thank you.